Welcome to Elevate, a Women's Leadership Institute podcast where we showcase stories, celebrate successes, and shift culture. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Elevate, a Women's Leadership Institute podcast. Today we have two beautiful ladies, smart and intelligent. I'm so excited for our conversation. We have Tonia Dalton. She is a partner at Induo Marketing. And we have Brooke Eastham, Senior Manager of Operations at CHG Healthcare. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
We're excited to be here.
Yeah, this has been in the planning for months, so it's always exciting once we get in the studio to actually chat.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself, including something personal, so we can get to know you better. It could be a favorite book, could be like, we've had an award-winning yo-yo person, all kinds of things. A backup dancer for Kiss.
Oh my goodness.
Nothing as exciting as that.
We've had someone who likes to take walks, so we span the whole gamut.
Okay. I would love to have been a backup dancer for Kiss. However, never accomplished that. I would say probably the most unique, weird job I ever had is I was a psychic on the psychic phone line at one point when I was in college.
Really? That's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah.
So it begs the question, are you a psychic?
No.
Okay.
I think I'm intuitive. I'm very empathetic. But no, I'm definitely not a psychic, which was why I ended up leaving because I just felt like a fraud. But yeah, avid reader. I love to read. I set a goal to read 83 books this year, and I'm possibly going to hit it.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very cool. Okay.
Oh, awesome. Well, Brooke Eastham here, and a little bit about me. So I am an operations manager at CHG Healthcare. I love to wear a lot of hats. In my work, variety is so important to me. And something kind of interesting, I guess, about me is, I have 3 kids. I really am very passionate about keeping women in the workforce, if that is something that they want to do, making it possible for, moms to continue working and making the workplace a more palatable and reasonable and flexible spot for that to happen. And I also absolutely love painting my nails. And I know that sounds like, okay, that's maybe not quite the hobby, but I mean, I really do. I'm very into giving myself my own gel manicures and
so
nail
I was going to
art.
ask, do you do
And
it?
I know that this is not visual, but it's just a regular manicure. But I am very on top of my nails and extremely passionate.
I love that. That is a great tidbit.
Yes.
I have to say, when we very first met, and we'll get into that later,
Yeah.
but our very first meeting, we had a one-on-one, and she asked me, I had my nails done, and we bonded over nails. So our relationship kind of began through our nails.
Yep, it's true.
I
You
love
have
that.
to have been there to really understand it, but it's very true.
There's
It
a
can
lot.
be
There's
anything.
honestly a lot to be said about methodology and nail polish. So we can get into it in another podcast. Definitely a different episode. but
Yes.
sign me up for it when you're ready.
I need some nail help, so good thing my hands are down
She's
here.
a bit of an expert. I will attest to that.
Okay. And Tonia, tell us what you do for work.
So I am a partner for Induo Marketing. It's a little boutique agency here in Salt Lake. And we're a full service advertising agency. We have clients that range from colleges to pharmacies to car dealerships, and we do the full gamut of marketing and advertising. A lot of people don't know the difference between those two things, but there's quite a difference between marketing and advertising, and we're full service. We do a little bit of everything for everyone.
Do you want to, and I feel like with the internet and just how everything is kind of merging, it does get a little squishy and all those things. Do you want to just give us a brief overview of the difference between those things?
Sure. So I have a business partner, and we always talk about how I'm kind of more of the marketing expert and she's more of the advertising expert. So marketing would be more just kind of general branding, event type things, a lot of internal stuff. So internal marketing amongst, within a company.
Okay.
Newsletters, blogs, that kind of stuff would fall more under marketing. Although, like you said, there is a mesh. So a blog does have some SEO elements, which would be more of the advertising side.
I see. Okay.
And then digital ads, that kind of stuff would be, programmatic, that kind of stuff would be more on the advertising side. But there is a mesh, social media, you have your organic posts, which would be kind of fall under the marketing side. But then you have your social ads that would fall under the advertising side.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you for explaining that. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's someone listening who is starting out and it might not be very clear for them what it is. And Brooke, tell us a little bit more about what you do at CHG.
Anything I'm asked, basically. So
That's a great answer.
when we have basically when there's a really big problem that that impacts our business in terms of marketing or our sales side with our CRM, I am often tapped to either just talk about or lead out certain specific initiatives. So currently, I lead our project team, so our project managers. I lead a couple different digital products where that just assist all of our marketing efforts within CHG to make sure that we are turning out quality work quickly. And I also run our trade show team. So truly doing just as many things as I possibly can to keep that variety out there, just to keep that variety in my day to day. And but yeah, I jokingly say anything I'm asked, but that's because that's truly what gets me up in the morning is knowing that I have, any number of things that I could potentially help with. And CHG is such a great company for that because they see talent at all levels and they, believe that anyone can have the answer to a problem and come up with great ideas. So this has just been the perfect position for me. And I also love leading people. I have a large team. I have several different functions and, 12 people reporting up through me. And that also, really gets me going too. Just being able to help people with their career paths and mentorship and getting people where they want to go and making sure that people are doing exactly what they want to do or building the career and life that they want to. That's really important to me as well.
She's a really great cheerleader and mentor.
It's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. So many things I could ask. What I want to establish first, though, is both of you have been through WLI. So you're a CDS graduate. Your company signed up for the Elevate Her Challenge, and you've also taken some of our programs. Tell me why that was important to you, or what drew you to WLI and what you learned.
Do you want to go first? Well, yeah, I was just going to speak to the Elevate Her Challenge. Sure. That was something that my partner Andrea and I did last year with Induo. We took the challenge, and it's important to us to, it's kind of in the title, Elevate Her, but that's a big passion of mine. I spent a ton of my career being one of the only women or the only woman in conference rooms and exec meetings, and it's just very important to me to change that scope, change that thought process of, we've always had a he, let's, it shouldn't just like, so that's been a big passion of mine, always has been, and just mentoring. I like to, our company, not necessarily by design, but we've just hired a lot. We have 2 men that work for us, and the whole rest of our company are women. And Brooke kind of spoke to it earlier. It's very important to me to support working moms, give them that flexibility so that they can have a career and still have some flexibility in their day and in their schedules. And I think Elevate Her really encompasses that.
I love that. Thank you. And Brooke?
Yeah, and I was lucky enough to be tapped as basically just a rising talent within CHG, and we have some of our executives, Carrie Norman and Leslie Snavely especially, are very involved in WLI, and so we have been a company that supports WLI, and so somebody nominated me as a person who would really benefit from the program. And so I was sponsored with a small group of other female leaders in the company to join the 2020 cohort. And it was just such an excellent and empowering situation to be in. Those first few months, the first 3 months were just so excellent, getting to be around, 100 women, or I'm not even sure how large our cohort was, but it felt like 100 women who all felt so passionate about their growth and empowering others and learning and taking in as much as we could and networking. I mean, that was one of the best things, was just knowing that we were all there to get to know one another. It really bolstered our network. It was 2020, and so we had this incredible shift in the way that
which is why you said 3 months.
Yeah, so the first 3 months were really great. We had this traditional networking opportunity and learning and connecting, but then we went through this, collective thing where everybody, we all were going through COVID at the same time, and we had this massive shift to the online, to doing this in an online environment, all while we were all learning. Some of us were dealing with sick family members or fear. I mean, we had this whole thing going on, but we were doing it together. And so we were still having these networking events. And even though they changed venue, so, going from in-person to online, we were still really able to stay connected and continue to bolster these relationships, partially and maybe helped along by this other crazy experience that the entire world was going through. But we had this great group of women that were still a consistent monthly meeting where we were still committed to the same things, but we could still talk through some of these big world events.
Yeah. What an interesting period, right? I love what you said about being in a room with people who are just as passionate as you about the topic. There is so much synergy that happens when women and men get in a space where they also align with what's going on. And that is an amazing thing to see over and over again, either with Elevator Challenge companies and the Elevator Luncheon or with our graduates to see. And then it's always really interesting how people go back to their companies and then apply it, right? Because everybody applies that passion differently. But I always really appreciate hearing what people have learned. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Tonia, you mentioned that this is really important for you, the ability for women to be flexible. Where did that come from? Was it like an experience in the beginning, just an overall? Was it from your family growing up? Like, what really solidified that for you?
Probably kind of all of that. I grew up with a working mom and dad. They both worked. And I remember some after school special. This is going to age me, but they did an after school special on latchkey kids. And I was like, what's that? And it was like, oh, that's me. I'm a latchkey kid. And at the time back then, I was the only one. None of my friends had moms that worked. And so, that was just kind of, that was my experience. And then when I became a working mom, I realized that flexibility is just so necessary, and particularly for moms. I think it's changed a lot where dads also get a lot more flexibility and need a lot more flexibility and are a lot more hands-on than they used to be. But still, I have a son that's homesick today, and it's just like if I didn't have the flexibility. So even in my previous positions where I've worked in the corporate offices and I wasn't the owner of the company, I still have always advocated, for, especially, and COVID really made this possible, but, for hybrid working situations. Because I do believe it's important to get together and be in person. I think that relationships are built that way. But like Brooke said, they can also be built online. So I would just say, I just think that living that personally and trying to raise children as a working mom while trying to build my career, while trying to start a business and build a business.
Juggling all the balls.
You can't do all of that if you don't have some flexibility in your schedule and in your mindset.
I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, I think mindset's a big part of it because some of the older generations just don't have that mindset. It's like if you're at work, you're there from 8 to 5 and that's when you're working. And it's just not like that anymore. Technology has changed that.
Yeah. And thank goodness for most of us, right?
Yeah.
Because that flexibility is a lifesaver to still do what we want to do.
Well, and maybe, for me, Saturday mornings are my time. Everyone in my family sleeps in on Saturday mornings. I have just this dedicated couple of hours and it's just me and my computer and my coffee and I can just get so much done. But that works for me.
Yeah.
That doesn't, Brooke's got younger kids and Saturday mornings are crazy for her, so it totally depends. But we need to live in a society where Saturday mornings don't work for her, but they work for me, and that's okay, and everyone is okay with that.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of it has to do with a mindset shift.
Um, I will get to you in just a minute, but I want to dive down on this, especially as a business owner. What is your opinion on flexible work and offering flexible work to your employees, right? There are some like bank tellers,
Right.
right? There are some positions that are actually, no, you are here from this time to this time. But I think many jobs have a lot of flexibility. How do you approach that as a business owner? Are there any drawbacks?
I'm fortunate in the business that we have because we are a remote agency, and we actually tout that when we're pitching clients because of that, we're able to go out and hire the best talent, not the closest
local,
talent.
yeah.
So we actually have employees down in Cedar City. We have an employee that is most often not in the country. He's all over the place.
He's on a beach somewhere.
Yeah, and we've got people in Chicago. We've got people in California. We have somebody that's in Nevada but spends most of her time in Florida. So for us, it's really important. But at my previous position, we had warehouse employees, and we had and so I try to be very cognizant of that because I understand that their job is physically being there and being in the warehouse, whereas the people on the other side of the building have some more flexibility. So I think it's important that you offer that flexibility, but you also have to be cognizant of those people and not shove it in their face,
Right.
And so for me, it was always kind of like I'm always available. I'm always working. I probably do it a little too much. But I always would make sure to always respond very quickly to things and just show that I am working, even though you can't see me.
There is that pressure.
It's a pressure,
Yeah.
and I think it's a pressure I put on myself more, But I think that for the business that I'm in, it's imperative.
I like that you position it as it is a talent strategy to offer remote. I think that's a really interesting approach to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, Brooke, I'm going to ask you the first question of like, what in your background made you passionate about this work and flexibility? And then I want to talk to you about specifically mothers that you talked about and CHG and retaining mothers, during those years.
Happy to speak on it. Well, I had a little bit of a different experience. I grew up with a stay-at-home mom, and I thought that was fantastic. Of course, I didn't know anything different. The game changer for me, though, was watching my parents go through a divorce when I was 9 years old. My mom was 40 years old, had not completed college, and had no job experience.
Yeah.
I watched her go through this. She went back to college at 40 years old. She joined the workforce she graduated in record time because she just did not have time to waste.
Yeah.
But she joined the workforce. She felt, this is not necessarily true, but she felt that she did not have any opportunities other than being a teacher because she needed her job schedule to line up with her
that
kids'
flexibility.
schedule.
Yeah.
So what that showed me is that having some amount of flexibility is an imperative. Well, what it showed me from a really early age, actually, is that it was super important to set yourself up for success. It made me very passionate about having a career first and making sure that I had something that I could return to should I want to leave the workforce to, be a stay-at-home mom. I did not end up choosing to do that. And I think largely because I just saw how difficult it was for my mom. It was so difficult to be later to the game, but she was able to do it. She is she's an excellent teacher. She ended up getting her master's degree, and she's just done absolutely everything that she could to be top tier and, the best educator out there. She teaches junior high science. And so,
wow. Shout out to Brooke's mom. Yeah.
So watching that made me so passionate about a couple of things, about being able to retain a career as a parent, but then also about having some choice. I say it was sort of a perceived choice for my mom. That's all she could really see, was that teaching was maybe the only way. And, in the mid 90s when this was going on, maybe maybe that was a little bit more of a reality. But as Tonia said, COVID changed everything. And even before COVID, we're in an online digital world. It is not true that so many of these office jobs need to be in person. It is really, it just isn't. I agree with Tonia where connection is absolutely important, but I think it's really important as a leader to be realistic about what can and can't be done online. As you were saying, there are many jobs that you have to be in person because it's a face-to-face interaction that you're having. But most corporate jobs can be done at home or in another location, as evidenced by all of the companies that experienced record growth during the pandemic. So I think it's important to just say that out loud. So
and I will say, and it's interesting that you brought this up because I don't think I'd made this connection until you just said this, but pre-pandemic, it was not part of my career trajectory and it was never going to work for me. But after I became a working mom, I used to fantasize and be jealous of people that worked in the school system because my perception was the only flexibility I could have in matching his schedule would be to work for the school. And post-pandemic, I don't believe that anymore. But I actually had that same kind of thought process that your mom had.
Yeah. Well, and maybe that, and again, maybe that was the reality. Maybe that actually was the reality more or less, because whether or not it was actually feasible, that was the prevailing sentiment. And so if leadership is saying that, then that is true.
It's true. Yeah.
Now we've seen a different way to go about it. And I'm hoping that, companies can continue to lean into it, even though it would be very comfortable to just have everybody return to office. I think allowing for some level of flexibility is so important to keep really great, talented people in the workforce. And that's important. It's so important. It's important to our local economies. Yeah. It's important for our kids to see that you are not just defined by one thing. You're not either working or a parent. You can be both things. Absolutely. And parenting itself is absolutely hard work, but anyway, they don't exist separately. So it is such a passion of mine. So
I love that. I definitely believe in embracing the and, but that is a flexibility mind shift that I've had to come to over time. I do think that there was a general perception about school teaching, right? Because you could be home when your kids were there, or secretaries. You wouldn't have the whole load of the leadership, but you could make a living. It's really interesting because we say often that if you can't see it, you can't become it. And while that's not totally true, people become things all the time, right? That's how we get pioneers. But I think it's so much easier when we show what it looks like. We used to drive past the Capitol, the Utah State Capitol, all the time. And I would take my kids in, and they've seen me do things in there and talk to representatives. And I've taken my kids on marches and rallies and different things because I want them to see that this is their house, that the things that happen there affect them. And who better to teach them than me? So I love that idea of embracing the and showing people what they can do. And CHG has they've done a lot of really great work. Kudos to Leslie for retaining women after they give birth.
Yes.
So it is possible, and they did save money. So it's a good business strategy too. So I appreciate them leading the way in that.
Absolutely. CHG does a great job. 2 of my 3 children I had while being employed with CHG, and they have made it such a comfortable way to come back with different programs they have, after maternity leave, sort of a graduated return to work where the first week maybe you work 20 hours for a couple weeks, then 30, then 40, if that works for your team. And it's such a gentle way to return, and it shows a lot of support. They also contribute to childcare costs. In the last few years, they've increased their benefits to include that. partnering with different strategic companies to provide discounts on corporate daycares. Like, these are all family forward policies that act as sticky benefits to a company. And so it saves a company money because we want to be here. We feel supported. As a parent, I feel very supported at CHG. And, and a lot of companies have the opportunity to do that, even without spending much or any money. Honestly, just being supportive and being supportive of flexibility, and having a little bit of a mindset shift when people are open with you about why they might need a certain amount of flexibility, really making sure that as a leader you're not that you're really not thinking that anything is because of kids or because of parenting, and just allowing for flexibility. There's so many ways that you can be a leader who can support these, friendly, female and family friendly policies without spending money. Now, of course, if you have some money to spend, I've got ideas on ideas, but there are so many ways, and it's incredibly important, and it saves companies money. And again, it's so good for our economy to have more people, working and creating products, and also demand for those products. I mean, we're all, it's such a rich tapestry,
both
and we want to be part of it. So,
well, and I think it's an important point, like you just made. It's not just about working mothers. That's
what I was thinking.
Talent in general. You're going to keep and obtain better talent if you can. All of those people I just listed that work out of state for us, I think only one of them is a parent. So it's I think flexibility is important whether or not you're a parent.
Right.
Absolutely. Sure. And I think that business is shifting enough that this is a great time for business to create strategy, right? It's not just the silo of let's let women come back after they have kids.
Yeah.
It's the strategy of our people are our biggest resource. Let's treat them well. If they have families, it's a family-friendly policy, right? If they don't have, they still get access to the things that they would want. And I think at a basic level, that's just very fundamentally human. But somehow as corporations build, especially if they're old and established, it's a little bit of a turn for them to realign that and to think that way. But I love that we've brought up so many benefits of allowing that type of environment. Why do you think people resist diversity or resist, because sometimes people feel a lot of scarcity around the topic of women's promotions, or a woman got hired over me, and we give full credence to it's okay to feel that fear. We want it to be a really safe space for people to show up however they feel. But I think the truth actually lies in the data.
Yeah.
And the data, without emotion or feeling or bias, says that the best candidates get hired, right?
Yes.
Anyway, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
I think that you touched on it, and it's a scarcity mindset. It is a general fear that if somebody is winning, then I might be losing.
Very binary.
Yes. And I just don't think that that's reality. I think when you're considering truly any space, but we'll talk about companies in general.
Okay.
Your company has a growth mindset. They need to. That's what companies are around to do. They are growing. And so approaching any environment as if it was static, as if there's only such one number or a certain number of spots for women, and so it's a competition between women or between men and women. It's this scarcity mindset that needs to shift. It's not a static situation. We should be thinking about growth. The table doesn't have only a certain number of chairs at it. We can always be adding
love that.
to the pie. And so that's what I think really needs to change, is just a mindset shift about how much opportunity there actually is. It's unlimited, really, really it is. And, there are so many different departments in my company today that did not exist 2 years ago. So to assume that there's only a set amount of opportunity and that somebody might be taking that from me, is just a fixed mindset to have. And I think that we can all agree that we are trying to grow all of our businesses and organizations.
Yeah.
And so approaching it that way can hopefully help people shift their mindset about what they perceive as reality for what's out there for them.
Yeah, and I think transparency is really important in a company because sometimes there are fixed things. There are fixed positions, there are fixed pay, but being really transparent about that. But over here, we have all this opportunity for growth, and I really appreciate how you brought up not just men and women, but women and women competing too. I think that's important. Tonia?
I think a lot of it is just that's how we've always done it.
Yeah,
and I think
and
that
it just
people
takes
get
work
stuck
to redo it.
And well, that's how we've always done it. And we've talked a lot today about the pandemic because it was such a huge change. And I think that's kind of changed that. Like how we always did it was people came to the office. Well, we don't always do it that way anymore. How we always did it is we had a male CEO. Well, we don't always have to do it that way anymore. So I think it just keeps coming back to that mindset of getting out of that's how we've always done it, or this is the limited amount of opportunity that there is. It's like there's more opportunity. It's not limited, and you don't have to do things the way that we've always done it. In fact, often in there's a lot of proof showing that when you change that kind of, you change the structure, you change the opportunities, it ends up benefiting the company.
And the data, as you said, shows that when you have more diversity and and a better makeup between men and women on any board or leadership, the companies do better. And I think that there's just a broader sense of broader ideas. People feel safe to bring up new thoughts and plans, and to Tonia's point, you're just bringing in some new perspectives overall. You're just being more creative. And so that's what I assume is part of the reason why you can see in the data that diverse boards and companies just do better. It's because of so many different mindsets, perspectives, and ideas.
Yeah. I think sometimes people think of leadership as like upward movement, which sometimes it can be, but as you move upward, that means you know more. And so you don't need more opinions at the table because you've already gone through it. And then I've seen some leaders realize that, no, I'm a leader to embrace more people. What can we bring and do together, right? And not that either one is bad, just leaders are different in how they apply this. And I think the humble ones are the ones who are like, what's your opinion? What do you think about it? Willing to engage and take feedback, and because it really is a strong business case to do it. So I'm always interested in the resistance on it.
Well, and how often has someone said something to you and you say, "Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way,"
right?
And it's like
For sure.
I mean, for me, that's always like a kind of a treat. Like, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way,
instead of resisting it.
Yeah.
Well, and when you talked about we do it because we've always done it this way, I'm like, that's a great marketing campaign, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, so many things we could put on that.
Exactly.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
Well, and how many new and interesting companies have we seen in the last 10 years that are billed as disruptors because they are taking what Tonia's saying, always doing how we've always done it, completely head on and changing the game. Yeah. And I mean, and it's such a powerful position to be in, to take on some of these these old ways of thinking and completely disrupt it, and embracing that there's some power there. And
whole new industries have been, I mean, could you imagine 10 years ago ordering a mattress online?
Yeah, absolutely not.
Or even Grubhub, right?
Right?
Like, to my home whenever I want.
Right.
So we need these new ideas no matter where they come from, honestly. So
yeah, I love that. Okay, so I think one thing that I have seen that has really helped women is the opportunity to have a mentor, but more specifically an ally, someone who sees your potential, who can open opportunities for you, and kind of pave that path. I'd love to hear about an experience of yours where you felt you had an ally, or how you were an ally to someone else.
I love this question because I think this defines our relationship like to a T. Brooke and I, we met at CHG. I had asked, I had just started there. She was already working there, and I wanted to like find out who are some strategic people that I should
Sure.
get to know. So I threw a one-on-one on our calendar. And like I said, we bonded over fingernail polish and our nails. And it just led to this like bond beyond work kind of thing. And, how many years, 5-6 years later, we're still sitting here, and
That's cool.
we refer to each other. We're allies and mentors, but we're kind of each other's wing woman.
Yep.
I Induo sponsored a Silicon Slopes Women in Leader Mentorship Program, and I had to go to this event, and I didn't want to go alone, and so she's my wing woman, and
I love
so
it.
we attend these events together, and we're both building our networks, but we're kind of doing it just kind of as a, hey, I want a friendly face there with me.
Absolutely.
But from that, we've built an incredible network, personally and professionally. So I would say, she's a great example of being the ally for me. My business partner that I'm partners with, at Induo, we started working together. The number keeps getting bigger. I've been saying 25 years. I think I've been saying that for a couple of years. So 26, 27 years. We met the first day at work. We both were working at a TV station, our first full-time jobs out of college. And we worked together for about 8 years. And then we stayed in touch. And I think that keeping in touch with these mentors and these allies, one thing that I tell Brooke, and we're not always good at it, but we try to, like when we get together for lunch, I always say, let's get the next one on the books. Like even if it's 2 or 3 months out, let's put it on the calendar.
Otherwise life runs away with you.
Yeah. And so my partner and I did that. We stopped working together. We kept going on walks together. We both had babies around the same time. So we would take them out in strollers and go on walks. And we did that for 5 or 6 years. And I was in a situation where I needed a job, and she was working in an agency and got me an interview, and I ended up working there, and we worked together, and then we stopped working together, and then we stayed in touch, and now we own a business together. And it's been a 26-year-long relationship journey that started, on that first day of work. So I definitely have really strong examples of allies in my life, and they mean everything to me. They've put me where I am right now in my career.
I love that.
Yeah, I love what Tonia did at CHG, because that's something that I tell lots of people to do, is ask your leader who's important to get to know. Start having 15-minute conversations here and there. If you're a shy person, you already work together, so you already have a reason to meet. It's not completely out of the blue. Make sure that you can tell yourself that. I understand being shy. I feel like I was shy for a long time. Yeah. And kind of came into my own sometime in my 20s or something. But so I do understand. But making those connections is so important. And then when you have connections that feel like a little beyond, like how Tonia and I have really connected on many things, take care of those relationships. Do it really consciously. As Tonia said, make sure that you are treating that like the asset that it is. Your network is absolutely an asset. And it's just something that you can grow together. You can grow with a team, as Tonia and I have. You can also, of course, do it alone, but it is something that deserves a lot of attention. And the thing is as you do that, as you get better at it within your own company and externally, you find allies, because you find people who know you, who will speak positively about you when you're not in the room, or who will say, oh, I met somebody who knows a little bit about that. Let me connect you with Patty. She is somebody who knows so much about the women's leadership in Utah, and she's so involved. And making those connections is so important. And just being very broad and pointed about getting there, dedicating true time to it is very important.
And I have to say that you're excellent at that. I think that you are such a good ally. I mean, every time I show up in an event and you're there, I just feel like, okay, at least I know someone here like you. You're like my little, my shadow wing woman when I can't take Brooke with me. But you're excellent at that. And I had something recently where I was nervous, and you sent me a message and you were like, you've got this. And I literally took that with me I had to do a photo shoot, and I was not comfortable, and you gave me the courage, and you're such an ally. I think that you're really good at that. And you've emailed me at Induo and introduced me to people. And I think that you're an excellent example of that.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. I I like to create safe spaces for people. And in one of our very first podcasts we did, she brought up the idea of practicing leadership. And then often we don't get to practice leadership, right?
Yeah,
Even
it's
coming on a
true.
podcast. Many of our podcast guests have never been on a podcast before. And just the opportunity to try it out. Some of them love it. Some of them are like, never again. But it's always fun to have doors open up for you.
Yeah.
See if you can try it. And I love what you said about it is an asset, right? We
Yeah,
treat it as such.
absolutely.
Mhm.
And just to add on what you said about having these leadership opportunities, I think anybody can take that. Anybody has an opportunity to connect people together, even if they're not direct leaders or they don't feel that they have a ton of power at work. What you can be is a connector. That is easy. When you hear people asking about, about not know, or if just talking about anything, if you have somebody who might know a little bit more, connect that person.
Yeah.
Like, be that connection point, and that's a way that you can, just practice this indirect leadership that helps you to be an ally to others and to be seen as a connector, and it truly is just another way of networking that maybe isn't as direct as what we think of when we think of networking.
And I think
Yeah.
it builds confidence too.
Mm-hmm.
I think so too. Yeah. You want to talk a little bit more about that? I think that's true.
Well, yeah. I mean, if being an indirect leader, you just when you start connecting people, it feels good. It just like
You're
you
like,
feel,
oh, I do have something to get.
I have something to offer.
Yeah.
And I mean, someone sent me a picture of a booth, and I'm like, well, I don't need that, but Brooke might, so I'll connect you to,
I love it.
And it's like, if I can give her something that might be helpful to her,
Mhm.
it makes you feel good. It's just, I think anytime you can do something for someone else, it makes you feel good. And these are small, small little things that you can do.
Mm.
And it's kind of that fragmented growth. It's just like, if you do these little tiny things and they build on each other, that you can see it. There's a term for it in nature. Little small things that together make something really strong. And I think that if as confidence, little tiny steps on that will build and boost that confidence.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And I think that many women are looking for the permission to build that confidence, or they get into it and it maybe is a little hard, so they stop. So I'm glad we touched on that. One thing that I've started encouraging women to do is to tap each other on the shoulder, to nominate each other. So I've started sending awards out to people and saying, who do you know? Right? Because women are very resistant. We were talking with someone in St. George at one of our last events, and she's like, I had this coworker, and every award she sent me and said, would you recommend me? And I was like, oh, you're audacious. What? No. But then I was like, why not? Why not? And so she did. And I thought that was just a really interesting conversation. And I see the same people winning awards over and over again, which is so great. I love that. But I also want to expand that because there's so many amazing people in our state. So I'd love you guys to tell that story of how you nominated Tonia.
Yeah, absolutely. For the 40 over 40 that we have here in Utah, I have had a couple of colleagues and friends win that award. And so when nominations were coming around, I know, no offense, but you are not great at self-promotion. So, I mean, and a lot of us really aren't. We can see so much in others that they are not comfortable saying about themselves, even if they know it to be true.
It feels so aggrandizing or something.
It does.
Right.
Yeah.
And so with all of the work that she had been doing recently with Promise to Live and, other great work that Tonia does. Tonia is one of these people that always will raise her hand. She's willing to do extra work. She's willing to volunteer her time and her talents to organizations that need it. And I mean, works herself to the bone sometimes, and when she probably shouldn't, but that is Tonia. And so when the nomination period came around, I just thought, of course, someone needs to nominate Tonia, and this is an easy nomination for me. I like to write and communicate in general. I did not have a hard time, putting together a few things, and that's something that I like doing. Now, maybe I'm just like Tonia on the other side that
She
I
is,
don't
yes.
really want to talk
I will be nominated
about
next time.
about myself.
Isn't that
but
so funny?
but I just think it's so important. I think it's important to just like let's all just admit that we're not great at self promotion, and knowing that, be good at it for somebody else.
Yeah.
I see this in Tonia. Now that I know kind of the nomination process, I've got my eye out of who I'm going to nominate
Yeah,
next year.
I love that.
Like, this is something that I'm
Good.
making it a habit of. There are many awards that, I mean, for lots of different things and lots of different groups.
Yeah.
And we should be nominating the people in our lives that we know deserve it.
Absolutely.
And because they're not going to do it for themselves
Right.
necessarily. And we have that power. And it's so much easier to do it for somebody else than it is to do it for
It is.
yourself.
100%.
So if we can all agree to do that better, then we're all going to benefit from it, truly.
I think so. I think that's a huge lever that we don't pull very often.
Yeah.
How did that feel? I saw you getting a little uncomfortable as she was talking about you.
I know. I feel flushed. Yeah, I'm horrible at self-promoting. I fully admit I ran for office several years ago, and I did not ask for help. I didn't ask anyone to go door knock with me. I felt like, why would people want to do that? And I lost by 12 votes. And now that I have that hindsight and that perspective, I'm like, people are like, I would have helped. But I won't ask for it. And so, yeah, self-promoting is very, very difficult for me. And when we were at the award ceremony,
where you looked radiant, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I had Brooke with me and a really close friend, and then my sister-in-law. And my sister-in-law looked over at me, and I just think of her. She's so successful, and she's such a great, role model. And she's like, you don't seem like you're having fun. And I'm like, I'm just nervous. And I just, I feel like this imposter syndrome kind of thing. And she just said, well, I'm really proud of you. And it was just that one thing, like just from that one person. And it just meant so much to me. And I'm like, I'm proud of me too. Like, why can't I say that? Why can't I admit that? But that's, all of us need to get better at that.
And we can extend that gift to others too. I mean, what your sister-in-law said to you, you've said things like that to me and to many others too. And so, passing that goodwill around and advocacy and, really shining a light and talking about people for all of the good that they're doing.
Yeah.
I think it's just such a miss when we assume that people will just know that you're doing a great job and they'll just feel it. It's just not how it works. We do have to be upfront about our accomplishments and the accomplishments of others. And so doing that for others is something that we can all do. It's so much easier to do it for others. And what goes around comes around, I assume. So
yeah, it does.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Ladies, you're amazing. And I could talk to you for hours, but our time is up. So I think I want to close on a two-part question. How do you define success at this point in your career? Because you've both had different things that you've done. How are you currently defining success? And if there's one thing in this area that organizations or individuals could do to move this needle forward in this work, what would that be?
Gosh, how do I define
paper,
success?
scissors.
I know. I think this year specifically, I felt kind of an inner peace with my career, and I think, and it's been years and years to get there, but I feel like I've accomplished a lot of the goals that I wanted to. So, and I don't want to make success be about checking off boxes. It's not that. I think we've talked a lot about mindset today. And I think that it really comes down to that mindset. Like, I feel like success for me is me acknowledging some of my accomplishments and admitting them, like Brooke said, I'm not good at that. A lot of us aren't. So even if I'm not going out and shouting it to the world, even just telling myself like, hey, you've done a good job. You're doing this. What you're doing is working. And I think that mindset of talking to myself that way, self-talk, I think is a big thing for me, as far as success. And then, watching my son watch me be successful is really important to me, showing him that work ethic and just, I have to brag. My son's 14 and he starts his first job this Saturday, and he did it on his own. And like, that's just, to me, like that's success for me as a parent, so that he's got that ambition.
Yeah. Very cool. Thank you. And one thing that might move the needle in this work we're doing?
these podcasts keep talking about it. I think keeping the conversation going, we have to be out front, and we need to talk about it, nominating people, getting more and more recognition to women, whether they're at the beginning of their career or they're later in their career. I'm also with Women Who Succeed, which gives scholarships to women, and it's like they haven't even started their careers yet. They're still in college trying to figure out what they want to be.
Because it's a whole pipeline of things.
And it has to start, from the time that they're little all the way up, and just, I think, talking about it and keeping these conversations going. And this podcast is great for that.
Awesome. Thank you.
At this stage in my career, I generally define I feel successful daily because I am tapped for, like, as a connection point. People know that they can feel comfortable coming to me to find where they need to go next, to talk about their career, to talk about just a problem that they're having at work, because they know that I can connect them with a person, connect them with the program, or I can just talk about things and that what I have to say, essentially means something to some people, and that is success to me. And I mean, how have I gotten here? Again, like, just lots of listening and trying to understand people's life experiences and what they need out of work. And that's why I currently feel successful in my career as a leader and as just in my, very general field of operations. That feels successful to me. What can we do to move the needle? Be so open. Try not to appear so busy that people are afraid to talk to you. I think that's something that's a
tricky one.
It is so tricky because we are all so busy, but truly doors are so much more open to you if you can keep these connections, like we talked about earlier. Really maintaining your network growth and these connections and seeing it as an asset is what you can do to kind of move the needle, in my opinion. But carving out time for these connection points, even when they're very minor, but so that you can be that for somebody else, and so that you can, again, help and connect. And, like, it does so much for everybody. So, yeah.
Very cool. So talented, so thoughtful. I've really appreciated our conversation today and the things that we've talked about. Thank you for the work that you're both individually doing in our communities and helping the work move forward.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thanks, Patty. This was great.